Hey, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting adventure into what one of my friends calls the prison broadcast, but what I like to call the Inmate Alliance. So, we want to welcome you to the live broadcast of The Insider, and my goal is to give you the truth about the federal prison system. So, with everything being in the news lately, you got to figure this one is right there at the tippy top for being messed up. So I want to tell all of those behind the wall what they need to know every day and to enlighten those outside the wall with what's really going on. So if you're an inmate, former inmate, family member, loved one, buckle up, stay tuned for the truth from one who's been there. I'm your host, the one they call the old guy. Before I get started, I want to send a special shout out to my friend Scott Phelps. Scott, another one of the guys who was a victim of circumstances and got sent to a federal prison at the hands of an unscrupulous set of prosecutors and judges. And another first-time nonviolent offender, no drugs, no alcohol, no nothing contributing to it. And I think it's just awful that happens to people. Scott's going through some very difficult medical issues, not the least of which was facilitated by the crack medical staff at one of the federal prison facilities. The incompetence of these people has led to more problems for more people. And besides the other issues of unscrupulous prosecutors and judges who could care less, sending someone to a federal prison who is really shouldn't be there, prosecuting them for things that, they use this little catch-all conspiracy. You're conspiring with someone else. Well, not so true. And then knowing people have medical problems, and they send them there anyways with the mistaken, what shall I call it, impression that medical care in the federal prison system is acceptable. This has to lay on their conscience. Someday they have to be accountable for this. Someday they have to pay for this. And sending people who shouldn't be there in the first place and are ill, and the resulting unbelievably horrendous medical care has contributed to more medical problems for more older inmates than you can imagine. So besides everything else, sending someone to the federal prison system in an effort really to try and kill them is just beyond the pale. So Scott, my friend, God bless you, God be with you, and I hope you recover quickly and fully. My sincerest wishes for you. And guys that do listen to the show that know Scott, send him a shout out and give him your best wishes. Now, clearly the BOP, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, has been the poster child for a money-wasting bureaucracy, and by reducing prisoner counts, that the waste hopefully will begin to leave itself by reducing the population. So the prison system has to focus on rehabilitation. Housing people is one thing, which they do, and they do it well, but rehabilitating somebody, sending someone back to the same neighborhood, same set of circumstances, everything else, and say, go be a good boy or good girl is absolutely ridiculous. Most people have lost everything. They haven't got a dime, and then say, well, we've taken everything and geez, you're still paying us restitution. So, but you go be a good person. How do you recover from that? What is in the mind of these people? You can't own a home. You can't own a car. You really can't do anything, and you can seemingly play games with it, but, they make it impossible for people to recover. Absolutely impossible. And it's no wonder the recidivism rate is the way it is. And instead of training moderate to low risk inmates for good paying jobs in the building trades and get your facilities repaired while you're at it, we just let them sit there and do nothing. You can make sheets or make shoes or cut towels. That's the kind of stuff that goes on. Or you can package furniture that was made at Unicor so that it can go out to federal agencies. What is that? There are not many places where that's a useful skill. But if they train you to be a plumber, a pipe fitter, which are the same thing, an HVAC technician, electrician, any number of trades, getting people into training programs or apprenticeship programs, oh no, we're just going to sit on our finger and sit on our thumb and do nothing. And I'm sure Director Mitchell is trying extremely hard to get things going and get some reform in there. But he's bumping up against this old-time bureaucracy, people that don't want any change. And I can't imagine why they wouldn't, but they want no change. Another thing is hire a food service director at each facility. And they can train those same low-risk prisoners to be line cooks, sous chefs, or whatever, all while providing nutritious, good-tasting food to the inmates. So, you're getting ready to go back out on the street, and you're actually training them to use a marketable skill when they get out. What is so hard for them to understand? You get your buildings fixed while you're training guys to be in the building trades. You're getting people ready in culinary service to go out and get good paying jobs in an industry that's just hurting for people. Both of them are. Teaching some computer skill. Oh, that's right. We don't have computers. They got typewriters. Let's see. This is 2025, and I'll bet you the typewriter that was being used at my facility had to be 40 or 50 years old. Because, God, Lord knows what they're going to do on a computer. What is wrong? Or inmates, I believe it was New Jersey, they have computers, but they still use floppy disks to save the work that you're doing. I haven't seen a floppy disk in 30 years. I'm sitting here recording this show on a memory stick, which has got 100 times the memory of a floppy disk. I mean, you want people to go out and be productive members of society, and yet you kill them every step of the way. You take everything from them. You don't train them to do a darn thing and then say, go out and be a good person. This is absolutely outrageous. And the BOP's dirty little secret is that serious offenders make up a tiny percentage of the federal prison population, a very tiny percentage. Everybody talks about the supermaxes and all that kind of stuff. But that's a small part. Of the 160,000 people that are in the federal prison system, I'll bet you 145,000 of them are minimum to low-risk people. And I'll bet you a fine percentage of those are elderly, getting non-existent medical care. The remainder of federal prisoners are everyday offenders, mostly are nonviolent, who would normally be prosecuted by the states, and others that the states would never target for prosecution. And yet, these unfortunate individuals run afoul of a very broadly drafted federal criminal statutes that can snag the unsuspecting and can be misused to social or political advantage. I am going to tell you that this whole prison system and the mechanism that gets you there, the prosecutors, the judges, the defense attorneys, they're in cahoots, man. They socialize together, they rub elbows together. If you have a federal public defender, the government's paying them, the same people that's prosecuting you. What? There is no justice in this system. It is horrific, the things that they do to you. And it's horrible. And then they get you there, and if you happen to not be well, which they could care less about, because that little prosecutor that told the judge that, oh, the medical care at the federal prison system is very good. I'm going to tell you, go spend a couple of months there and you see what the acceptable level of medical care is. People at Butner, which is it's a level 1 facility for ill inmates, I think they average 1 death a week or more of inmates who are receiving non-existent medical care. Or my friend Scott Phelps. You know, Scott was not well and he was there, and you think that little idiot Cheney, the little RN who was totally incompetent, would send Scott for the medical test that he needed? Scott's body didn't make platelets. And he needed blood work and transfusions to keep him up to health. And do you think those people would take care of him? Especially that fat slob that was over in charge of that? Not a chance. Or My Cancer, or a gentleman, I don't know his real name, they called him Face, lost an eye to cancer. Preventable stuff. You know, if you're going to be in charge of imprisoning people, then somebody has to be accountable when stuff like that happens. There is no reason for any number of people to be sent there for the garbage that goes on at the federal prison facilities. So, you know, let's not forget that the over 150,000 strong army of DOJ lawyers, yep, almost equal to the population of the federal prison system, FBI personnel, and the alphabet soup of other federal law enforcement agencies whose combined budgets dwarf the total GDP, the gross domestic product, of over 30 countries. These are just attorneys. Can you imagine this? This is supposed to be the United States of America. We have this thing called due process that gets trampled on daily, hourly, by the second, by the minute. It's unbelievable the kind of thing that goes on. And then they send people who should never be there to a federal prison where they can really figure out what it's like to be, for people to run roughshod over them with egos the size of New York, that I'm in charge of all these people. You know, the little pipsqueak in the food service line, you can only have 2 sweet and lows a day. What is the matter with you? You're starving me to death in the first place, and you can only have 2 sweet and lows. That, you know, if it hadn't been the circumstance, you probably would have punched him in the mouth. Maybe, you know, this is one of the guys who could not get a job anywhere else. It's just the incompetence is unbelievable. And then there's the prison profiteers who make fortunes catering to the tax-funded bureaucracy, or the people who absolutely misuse prisoner funds or overcharge people. You know, the company store, the prison commissary, let's call it the company store because they take everything from you. Everything. So unless you want an ill-fitting set of... Hello. This guy standing in my window looking at me. It's like, well, hello, how are you? Anyways, we're talking, if you want decent socks, you know, you got to buy them. If you want a pair of decent shoes, you got to buy them. If you want underwear, you got to buy it. If you want a tube of decent toothpaste, you got to buy it. $15 for an $8 tube of Sensodyne, and that was a couple of years ago. So, I mean, what's going on with this whole mechanism that we call justice? There is no justice. You know why there is no justice? Because there is no truth. Truth will kill you. And they all work together to spin this entire organization. It's absolutely horrendous. You know, it's something in fiscal year. Let's talk about the prison population. You know, because it needs to be reduced. So in fiscal year 2024, there were over 21,000 non-U.S. citizens sentenced for federal offenses. That represents about 34% of all prisoners sentenced in the federal prison system. In addition, there are over 8,000 veterans currently in federal custody for a variety of nonviolent offenses who are not receiving adequate medical and mental health treatment. If the VA Mission Act of 2018 were applied to these people, they could be transferred to the VA where they could get reasonably good treatment. And then there's the approximately 60,000 minimum to low risk first-time nonviolent offenders in the federal prison system who are eligible for release via the First Step and the Second Chance Act. Many are elderly and in poor health. Oh, pick me, pick Scott, pick a number of people, who in good conscience, knowing that the system is so broken, could send people in there who have cancer, who have other conditions, who are elderly, who absolutely shouldn't be there. Put an ankle monitor on them and send them home. Why is the government wasting $60,000 a year to house you, and then they're trying to kill you? So, by releasing eligible prisoners to home confinement or halfway houses, the VA and repatriating eligible non-citizens by repatriating eligible non-citizens to their home countries, the federal prison population can be probably reduced somewhere around 100,000 people. That brings the federal prison population back to its traditional level, which at one time was approximately 50,000 people. So this whole thing is out of hand. It's out of control. And an issue near and dear to my heart is the overzealous persecution of people by the DOJ, who seemingly have more interest in convictions, again, than the truth. Add to that the issue of inadequate representation, and you have a recipe for disaster. And it is a disaster. As I'm fond of saying, this is the United States of America, not Venezuela, not Russia, not China. What's going on here? Where is their moral compass? Where are their heads at? How can judges in good conscience allow this to go on? It's just so uneven. Prosecutors, I need a conviction. I got convictions. I got a 97% conviction rate. I remember watching, I think it was an episode of Bull, and he happened to go in and see a couple of young prosecutors in their office, and they had a conviction board. They were having a contest to see who could get more convictions. What? It was fiction, but it's not. What is wrong with these people sending so many people to prison that should not be there? And it is just disheartening. And it bothers me every day that this continues to go on. And then they ruin people, send them back ill-prepared, send people back in ill health. And nobody, I don't know, it's not my job. It must be somebody else's. You cannot continue to do this. You cannot continue to let these people sit there and send them back in their neighborhood without, being ready for it. So, anyways, that's my rant. And those are going to be my recurring themes as we continue to move forward. Is the inadequacy of the system, is the inadequacy of the justice system, and it is all about truth. It's not about convictions. It's about truth. So, moving on here. Excuse me. Despite many positive changes, there's still floods of complaints about abysmal living conditions in most federal facilities. Imagine that. And more serious problems of continued drug use, violence, and staff corruption. Yep, Butner Medium 2, affectionately referred to as residents as the Deuce, and Butner is a Class 1, is a top-tier medical facility, just for those of you who don't know, seems to be a hotbed for all this activity. Well, I'm going to tell you, it's not just Butner. It is everywhere. Butner, touted as a federal medical center, is anything but. Problems at FCI Butner include a long-standing pattern of neglected health and safety hazards, such as severe roof leaks. That's just about all of them. And mold, which is just about all of them. Black mold in the compound, living compound, black mold in the dining halls, black mold everywhere, and it is hazardous to people's health. And the failure in providing adequate medical care leading to inmate deaths. The union representing staff has raised concerns about these issues because they have to live with the mold and everything else as well. With reports of a major ceiling collapse incident in April 2024, highlighting the ongoing dangers to staff and inmates. Well, not so much to staff because they can get out of there, but the inmates got to live there. Most of the residents are elderly and poor health, an easy prey for both physical and mental abuse at the hands of other prisoners and staff who often resort to violence, and the staff has not been able to curtail it. Isn't that, it's just horrific. Pick on the old guy, and then the old sick people. I don't understand. And first off, you're in a medical facility, and then you're in a minimum to low risk classification. You shouldn't be there. You're not going to get the care you need by these incompetents. You're not going to get medical care from a staff that is made up of the lowest of the low, the worst of the worst, people who can't get a job anywhere else. It just, why they can't? Because the BOP and many federal agencies, they don't pay enough to get good people. Air traffic controllers, it should be a magnificent job. It should be a high-paying job. You got the lives of thousands of people in your hands that they're hoping you're extremely competent and capable of doing the job. But we don't really want to pay them what they should be paid, so we're not going to get the top people. Same thing holds true for the federal prison system. You're going to get the dregs. You get the worst of the worst in medical personnel. You get non-existent mental health issues. These poor guys from the VA or these poor guys and veterans deserve the best that they can get, and instead they're getting the worst. I just find it is so disheartening to see that going on. And I am one of the few voices that speak out in a public forum about this stuff because this cannot be allowed to continue. Again, it is all about the truth. And all of these agencies, all of them, Bureau of Prisons, the control, they all cover up for their missteps and their misdeeds. And then the proof is in the pudding. Sending the BOP, sending all these people out on the street that are totally inadequate to fend for themselves once they get out. Same neighborhood, same circumstances, and what do you think most of them are going to do? Teach them a trade. Do something that is interesting to them. Give them an opportunity to go out and be a productive person. Instead of taking everything from them, leave them something so they have a little dignity when they get out. They can have a car. You can buy a house. It's just so hard when they do that. They even, when you go in to a system, if you're old and on Social Security, they take your Social Security. Well, after all, you're getting a bed and food and stuff. Oh, really? Really? So I'm supposed to lose all my possessions, everything that I have, because you're going to cut my Social Security off. What about my family? What about taking care of my pets? I think that is absolutely reprehensible. Who thought that was a good idea? And besides that, it's not the government's money. That's my money. That's money I put into that system all those working years. And they act like it's their money. It's not. It is not your money. And in fact, the people that work at Social Security, they don't even participate in the system because they got a different pension plan. They got government employees' pension plan. And they're playing with your money. This is the kind of thing that goes on that needs to be addressed, that needs to be pushed. And as people move along and go on, these are the things that need to be fixed. And you don't have to be someone who's been in or a family or a friend. This is what the government is doing with your money. This is your tax dollars at work. And it's horrific. It's unbelievable. And they don't care. The prosecutors, the judges, the defense lawyers. If my attorney had asked me, so-and-so is going to testify against you, and here's what we think he's going to say. Tell me what you think. Tell me your side of the story. Tell me something I should know so that when he comes up on the stand, I can cross-examine him in a proper fashion so I know a few things. But they don't do that. They don't do that. Here's the proffer of your co-conspirator who really was the bad guy. You focus on that. No, I want to focus on the other guys who sold me down the river, who were drug addicts and thieves and absolutely looking the wrong way so nobody'd sue them, for incompetence. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Those are the kinds of things that need to be remedied as we move along. So we start right at the beginning when your whole life is going to shreds, that it is about truth. And these people sit and look at you like you're from outer space. Well, we think you did this and we think you did that. Really? Because the guy that actually stole the money made a deal with you to get less time, so you're going to go after me because you think you can make a case against me that because I use a federal public defender who, or as like many of us, that just didn't listen to us. And that is, again, part of the problem. So this whole thing, prosecutors, judges, public defenders, it's about the truth and nothing but the truth. Justice based off truth is a hell of a lot different than justice that is being delivered now, because that is no justice whatsoever. So, the government, they're saying they're going to do this and they're going to do that. You know what happens? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Cell phones are rampant in federal facilities. They get smuggled in, and they're all over the place. And if you get caught with one, you're going to go to the SHU and yada, yada, yada. I've been saying for months that the solution, years actually, that the solution is to put cell phone jammers in. The answer I got when I suggested that a couple of years ago? Well, first off was mind your own business. And secondly, as an aside, it's the staff use cell phones. They're not supposed to, but they use cell phones. So if there were jammers there, they wouldn't be able to use their cell phones. Of course, all they got to do is pick up the telephone that's sitting right next to them as their feet are up on the desk. But, they don't want cell phone jammers. Well, if you can't use a cell phone, they're absolutely useless. So put the jammers in. Hire better quality people. Hire good medical staff. Reduce the population so you have the money to do the things you need to do and do it right. And Mr. Mitchell, I feel sorry for you that this is such a tough road to hold. And I wish someone would get you to listen to this broadcast, because it's so important that you're able to do your job. So I'm going to pack it up now. And that's it for today, folks. Thanks for listening. And my sincere thanks to WBGU 88.1 FM for allowing me to express my views. And remember that if you have some interest, go to the website, which is www.inmatealliance.org, and check it out. You can re-listen to this broadcast if you are so inclined, or to past broadcasts. If you have a question, you can go to the website. There's a link to our email, or you can go to inmatealliance@yahoo.com. So there's a lot of ways to reach us, reach out. But please spread the word. Get people to listen to this. I think it's important. And please continue your support just by listening to me. With that, I want to hang it up. This is the old guy, and I've had a good time doing it. I'm sorry for the rants, but, I have fun doing this, and it's such a worthy cause. So thank you so very much, and I'm signing off for today.